Sangye chedan soge chanam chancho pardo dani kyapsunche bhage jinso yebe sonam ge dola penchre sangye nruparasho Sangye chedan soge chanam chancho pardo dani kyapsunche Bhage jinso yebe sonam ge dola benjere sanye endo parasho sangye chedan soke chonam chanjo pardo dani kyabsanche Bhage jinso yebe sonam ge dola benjere sanye endo parasho Sanjan tamje dewa dan lewe yudan lembara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan dan dungan ye yudan atawara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan men dewa dan minda wara gyu. Sanjan tamje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara gyu. Sanjan tamje dewa dan lewe yudan lembara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan dan dungan ye yudan antawara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan me dewa dan minda wara gyu. Sanjan tamje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara gyu. Sanjan tamje dewa tan lewe yudan lembara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan dungan ye yudan antawara gyu. Sanjan tamje dungan mede dewa tan minda wara gyu. Sanjan tamje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara gyu. Sajibe oji Juji mendo Jiro nishi Nyelde yembandi Sangye jendu Nidembu aye Rugenanda Jelaye Jebasha Yedam Guru Rana Mendala Kani Atayami. From now until my enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. From now until my enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground spread with incense, adorned with strewn flowers, Mount Meru and the 4 continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land, and by offering it to you, may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Thus meeting the teaching of the peerless teacher is due to the spiritual mentor's kindness. I dedicate this virtue for all living beings to be cared for by excellent spiritual friends. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
야, 다 건가 대시 될레스. 다 그선 건가론 휘치면 완전 주인베스.
So, hi everyone, good afternoon in Tashi delay. And Geshe is wondering if you were able to get online and receive the empowerment from His Holiness.
다 휘치면 완전 잠마 말해. 다 오늘 제리지 싱근다게 완전 지나 나서. 다 제리지 싱근다게 티 사다 눈영게 너빠다야라 초도 그러버래. 미스베 야버래.
아니, 디 툭치 챔포 말해.
두지 첨보래 제리지 인규 제리지기 넘불 만다지래.
라소.
나 되게 또 사다당 류이 너빠다 사이 너빠 텐데비 너빠 가야라 치고 펜도야래. 시 시하나도 홍배지야 나데. 다들 카멜은 돈투나 빼미스베 야래 야보야래.
And so, although Chenrezig is the empowerment of Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara is indeed the wonderful, amazing empowerment of the Lord of great compassion, but Chenrezig also has many different manifestations, and so also it's called the Sengi.
Singenda
is the sound like the sound like the lion's roar, the manifestation of Chenrezig of the lion's roar. In particular, receiving this from His Holiness is really, really quite incredible, because the power and blessings of this, and Geshe said the mantra Om Ahung and reciting this is extremely beneficial and has the ability to really purify and clear away the pains and troubles of the body, for example, the channels and the physical body.
탐진 나줄기 셈께야 돼. 시부지께 전부 상하겠다는데 연애면아들 장주기 셈다도 너무 동반이라 삼당 두배이나 대 상하승인데 놈대보자 그래. 대마도 띵이라 삼마 땅마 두배이나 상하승인데 용해요 말다. 배 미스비께 전부 그상 여름을 가서께 전부 숨고도. 와다 단단하죠 시해야 돼. 간지 장주기 셈기 민춘초도 시거래. 단단값도 시해야 돼. 장주기 셈 명하게 깬데 차당 몽숨도 그 지거라. 이걸 메기야 깬데. 저저 란진진들에 란진진 디기타 차당 몽숨 문도 주고 와래. 또 따로 단 거래. 텔레 견도 다 땡가야 가야게 삼도 시거래. 아니 리우급에는 동방이도 시거래. 인도가라 다 윤도 때 삼도 땅인데게나 늘로 콤페 콤그 아니 살루 그래. 뱀미스 펜도야래.
Although the teachings that His Holiness bestowed in regards to giving this empowerment were indeed that of the mantra yoga vehicle, of the secret mantra. And while His Holiness was teaching this, you see that this was really very much based in two things, based in the awakened mind, the altruistic mind of bodhicitta and profound emptiness. And if these 2 points, if you cannot wrap your head around these or make these a part of your practice, then you are not practicing secret mantra. Then for you, this is not secret mantra practice, because these are the very foundations of practice. the altruistic mind of bodhicitta and emptiness. And actually, His Holiness spoke a lot about the discordant factors, the things that are non-concordant with the mind of bodhicitta, meaning the factors of attachment, hatred, ignorance, being self-centered and the very selfish, centered, narrow-minded outlooks. And so these are something that actually we cannot have. In order for us to know emptiness, then these must come to cease. And it's actually emptiness that we must come to know, that we need to realize. And so in order to do that, we must again and again think and ponder emptiness, really mull it over, think about it, really scrutinize it again and again, so that we actually have progress and advancement in our practice and our spiritual development. And in this way, we gain that process, that progress, and also the mind becomes clearer and clearer. We're really clarifying the mind.
잠바다 니지니 그뒤이나 또 소미남 강에다 치우게 쳔버리 잠바 미남 잠바다 니지니 미남 야부 직장 투베이나 되니 장주기 셈신디 귤레겨 띵이 미남 용수 줘봐라 장주기 셈시기 와래 띵이 미남 마서나 장주기 셈 요야구나 요 말에 근데 치우게 쳔버리 제가
Okay, I'm going to turn my volume up.
윤도엔 탐제 나줄기 셈께다 윤도 다 저거 까뒤나 삼로탄 되게나 왜 미스가 팬다 용 그러다 냠는 것만 차고 다 되게
So the attitude of love and compassion, these two attitudes, these two precious mindsets, being loving and being compassionate. We should carry these at all times. They should be part of one's very being. If you can make them part of your very being, then when we fully perfect or bring them to a completion, fully developed love and compassion turns into bodhicitta. That is what becomes bodhicitta. And actually, without first nurturing these little sprouts of love and compassion, there is no way to nurture anything into full bodhicitta. And so without them, it's just not possible. And so wherever you go, whatever you do, you should always be engaging in this yoga, this practice of love and bodhicitta. And actually what is called authentic practice is love and compassion. That is what makes authentic, sincere practice.
Oh yeah, 당어도 우마린 타외나라 디스노레스 엠바투나 대와라 텔레 엠바메나 데스 디진지든 돌덴데 더바메나 텔레데스 스스노레스 다팅 가르잖아 단당하는소 차소 유몽라 견도 타야게 갑 레디가로와 우마린진 타외나라 디 지월에 숭야데 쿵데 우마린진 타와 두고와래 우마린지 타외나 갑 니베나라 요래 되게 결혼서 따게나
카레기 콜라 디 뇨몽 착당
너차라서 봐 견도 타야 돼
오케이 타야
단다 지월이고 쿵투사데 테레 에 고물루도 쿵투사데 가상한테 도기 치지 땅 봐. 왔다 되게 돼. 타르도는 점된데 숨는 거 두고 다 숨고 말해. 맞아 가자라 견도 타고 말다. 너 가서래 녀문을 견도 타고 와래. 너 차도 녀문 가자다 녀문이 가가라. 녀문 유된 가자데 개바 포여래. 개바 모여래. 니가 요래. 텔레 견도 타고 말해.
Lasso.
텔라 아니페 지위 중에 차도 요래. 견도 타야 돼. 차소 뇽문. 또 저번에 좀 타는 바 마지막에 미치는 니가 주들랑 아주 견도 타야 돼. 뒤가 견도 타고 가래. 뒤가 가서 중알 뛰고 가래. 뒤가 가서 이 마기버스고 가래. 뒤에는 타르토는 미니메 냥데 토벨라 가거래. 타르바토발라 가거래. 대화용을라 셈기 지데티기 라주고 가래. 딘주가라 견도 타와야지 자기도.
And it says, Nagarjuna has said in the precious garland of the middle way, sweet relief may be found from scratching a sore, yet it's altogether more pleasant not to have one. Similarly, indulging in worldly desires brings about some pleasure, yet to be free from desire is altogether more elating. And so, so these desires that we have, these attachments or aversions, the arising afflicted mental states, they serve no purpose to our happiness. Actually, they are a great fault. And if you would like to learn more about how the negative emotional states are unfavorable and how they are faulty, then please refer more to what Master Nagarjuna has said in the precious garland of the middle way. And this is something, you know, someone who is a great practitioner has written about, but actually this all goes back to the words of the Buddha, and we have heard different quotes from the sutras, the very words of the Buddha, also pointing to the very same thing, a fault in the emotional states and why they need to be eradicated. And really what they drive us to different negative action, they drive us to stealing, they drive us to all kinds of actions that in the end they're only causing our own misery. They're constantly causing our own misery. But what we must need to know is that, for example, if someone is stealing or there's someone who has done some negative action, we must not place fault in the person, but we really must place fault in what is driving that action. What is the negative emotion behind that action? It's these emotions. The emotions are not that individual. They are not that male or female person. It is not him or her. It is really the negative emotion that is behind it all. So it's very important that we place fault where fault belongs, which is in the emotion itself. And we must see how these negative emotions really cause our own unhappiness. They prevent our happiness. They prevent us from being liberated. They prevent any peace and happiness in our mind. So if we really examine it, we will really find lots of reasons and supports on why these are unfavorable and a big fault.
Nyumu yunden kansatalan raltag mares. Nyumu tangdel, nyumu tang yuden kansatala raltag mares. Tela tsive changris. Muni, dichadi ore. Indigala pe ngazo. Chalada chepapuni petka kaga chebaina, tini pentoduwa. Pena, kepa pojige, pume lula nimil taede, ko chaji chalengi yudenji. 차바달 된 되긴지 일단은 다른 초가지 그래. 질나 마기 냠는 책인지 부멜 메라탕 초고 말해. 부멜 메라탕은 니바요 그래.
Right.
Sawa bume singinde nyenge tardu range mare bume range mayorwa wejing samba marwa ta chapade doya tundala bume lula any misamaltaya any bume ina any bume chajinjina gibi lula ta urwa jibo jikyangre tingi ko buga gunni misamanta ta kebad bume le kebar gun yo marwa
Last.
Tati indikola ti ngazo koyamu jun samdangwa de pe misbe kechembore. Do su samdane eni chik taina. Teni susi yula nyumu kaya la pendo yongore. Ani yang richi la rangi tusu pena ngazo richi taba chadi gore. Taba ngazo richi na ramjun chadi roa. Rabjunjigi bume lule changayadang, bume la regayadang, tani chogu korang mare. Tab bume la tama duwe na sungore, chui kirgi na, ani chape kune la ne bume de kyop chogu mare se sungore. Tab bume de kyoba la rangi semna la magin dushi, singmin dushi, tindi chene chapa kaya tondala. Mala ini chapa kigi marwa. Ini simol chapa kigi marwa. Jidang mi nyomba jina ni zukakara madam. Jidang mi namchu chingi mi jina te yungo marwa. Tendi kala jelen gelen bumela ha chedan tendi che kala semen dingi rangi singmo am rangi nyen ki cho maltabut tendi samtangu ware.
Also, so that we understand this, very, very important, that we understand to find fault in these afflictive mental states. And also Aryadeva has said in the 400 verses that all of these negative emotions, it is these many various negative emotions that are the enemy. It is not the person that we look as our adversary. It is the negative emotions. And so what's important that we differentiate is that we must see the difference between the person who does the action and the action themselves. You know, really seeing them as very distinct. We must be able to separate these two out, the negative action and the individual. And so, for example, within the teachings, when it is taught, for example, that the impure substances of the female body, or the unclean nature of the female body. Why does this arrive in the teachings? Why do we read this within the teachings? This actually arrives in the teachings in order for us to break our attachment to our physical desires. This is something that is taught to break break attachment. It is not putting down women, for example, or the female body. Actually, within the practice of secret mantra, within tantric practices, it is a great fault to ever degrade a woman. And so this is actually a root downfall as well within the tantric practice. But rather, these kinds of teachings arrive as a kind of like an antidote to undesirable mindsets. So, for example, for me, as an ordained person and so forth, these are activities that I am, not involved with. And so we're taught, for example, when there is a female, then we perceive them as our mother. We perceive them as impure. But actually, this is saying that a female form is impure, or imagine them as one's mother. But the reverse can be said for a woman who is looking to cut her desire and lust towards the male form. Then it would just be reversed. Then we would be looking at the male form as impure or seeing one as one's father. So we must really open our minds up to the meaning of these teachings. What is it really saying? What is the purpose here? The purpose is for us to be able to eliminate undesirable mental states, such as great desire, where we really get attached. So again, as I am, someone who has taken ordination, these are things that we employ. We employ, seeing others as, women as our mothers or our sisters. And in that way, we won't also become attached to them in a physical or a romantic way. So these are ways of working with one's mind in order to eliminate actually emotional mindsets that are unfavorable.
Dungan ringi bachi bachi gyare. Tama ani be maobana dungal kegi kenchi kidwa. Tita chikbachi gyare. Pumbu koran ve tangpo yude ani be pame kuta le tuwe insan chikbachi gyare wate kebar ken midwa. Wata te samtangore. Chezan chumden legi pumu injegi di kacheta gyun sunya marta. Ta dine sunya de karzana chetu chawen dulja de keba insan kebe keba le chagan de nyung insan keba pume le chagan de ma insan pume lu de ichiare ta chetu chawen dulja de pume yena kebe lu la tenden gyundur ta uwata gyundur ta na tarin choga yore jikpa chikyare gyun tonga yore samlo dano korea yore ngaranzo samlo mata je tabena wata jen degor mata gyundur ta na kutta si chedana sangin na kor macha enbe nazu tan kanji jingudu Tindua te kondua. Wata te tire.
And so here, whether we're talking, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the male or female body. Actually, the very causal substances that they both come from are actually no different. And also what is the same is attachment to either one of them are the conditions that bring about suffering for us. But if we look at this form, whether we're male or female, doesn't matter. If you look at your own form, this form of aggregates, this has come about due to the substances of your father and mother. Actually, they come from these kind of impure substances or causes. And it makes no difference, be it male or female. And so here, when the Buddha speaks about the uncleanliness or impurity of the female form, it is not whatsoever to put down the female form at all, but to take that which we, that which has arisen as our form, that's which we are born with, this form, and look at it and really, examine what exactly it is. And in examining it, we can now see it is nothing so, special or wonderful, but we can really point to some impurities and uncleanliness and so forth, as we've been speaking about, in order to work with these emotional mental states. But it does take us putting some thought into it, because if we just ride along with this body's feelings, what it leads us into, all of the different kind of acts that if we just follow along these urges and feelings of the body and let these things just go on their own, we know where that can take us. So what the teachings do here is allow us to put some brakes on there and really examine what exactly is this body, and then to find these different faults within it.
직발에 맞아 바바 샤게이나 제페 루이나다 부메 루이나다 샤나 타다 나다 추세랑 경구도 되게 또예를 모두 지는 오마통야 이긴 믿어 지나 오마통야 오마다 대배 자체듯이 되는 데니 분부도 자체 못 잡아라 리시다 때는 바베이나 되니 믿어 둘이 같이 세지 통구도 지지지바지 강도도 루이지바지 강도도
Lasso, di oma tongi kola yapoko.
Mare, 맞아 디 리데니와 리시로 또봐 오마로 또봐 리디 케빌리니 오마도 리시던데 트랭기나 다 케빌리드 자체 침바라와
Lasso.
근데 부밀리니 트랭기나 부밀리드 자체 침바라와 대마다 타다나 더네 집지 겨라와 어떻게 이거 또 수제는 아주 삼당과래
You know, let's look at the actual anatomy of the body. Be it, you know, doesn't matter if you're male or female. You've got skin, you've got blood, you've got bones, you've got marrow, you've got bile. You've got all these kinds of impure substances, you know, in the body. That's what it's full of. You know, if there was some kind of nectar, you know, or pure milk just emerging from your pores, then it might be something wonderful and, you know, something sacred and amazing. But it's really a body of blood and flesh and bones and guts and marrow and bile and so forth. You know, outside of, you know, that it's nothing special.
그상아도 류기님이 셰그 갑자되어래 딘디가라 그상 솔로가 두주랭아도서 립지도서 다 랭아되는 거줘야래
랭아
두주랭아
오케이
다 가르라거는 류미상와 라진진자 맞을 답에 류를 가르쳐거래 디마신보 잔된당 다 잔된기 때문에 죽바주야당 아니 가르쳐래 굴군단들이 류를 닝접을 주고 와라 류를 뒤돌고 와라 다 거기 잘된데게 그 류들 미상바래 이나 그 주샤베 띠디 진부주 와슬라베나 디 어따 때까지 시거래 간지 류 미상와 잔nel로서 띠진베 구어 the resource the in bit timada take the cochusa tidan is imbuduazana the chanata there's some you think of tatan day or marisel of god
so in these last weeks and these last verses that we've been meeting, we've been discussing the impurity of the body or the uncleanliness of the body as it is. However, what we find ourselves doing is, you know, anointing ourselves with sandalwood or putting on cosmetics in order to beautify the body. But actually, underneath it all, the body is what it is. It is not naturally sweet-smelling or beautiful. It is full of lots of things that are unclean and impure. It is simply something outward, exterior that we put on to beautify it, but there's nothing naturally so sweet like sandalwood smelling in the body. And we pick up, we're in the 8th chapter, and we pick up on verse number 65.
Yeah, tuju renga te dang ridu kampa tangpuni de legedoa.
And the first, so 65 and the first 2 lines in 66.
Watatere. Yuila kuipe tite yangs ta zanden dang kapurla soba tijimputer giti te yang labre. Zanden so ins sonde na la kapur ta pe tijimri jimse diongurwa. Otaye. Jen means ko lüde mares ko zanden na time tendige lüde ma timare ma do lüge timata ma lüde means jengi tide jentala chichi 지리치나 차버제스. 근데 쟁기 뒤에라 주샤도가라 리들 차야 가르도스. 코니 유타데라 와스. 갈타지 띵아웨 딜레 차바 밀라민스. 위 코란라 리기 부가군이 애니베 딱 미상화 세지 때용다 미상 진 멤버 세지마다 되냐 미도가스. 주샤베 뒤에 장보더니 리기 뒤에 말와스. 이 코차고에 미도와슬라 그래. 땡원이래도 와. 리바트 때보다 또 삼다나 맞죠? 차벌 더해라 개버려였다.
And now in the text, the scent that now perfumes the skin is sandalwood and nothing else. And so true here. What is it that smells good? It's the sandalwood. It's not something else. It's not the body. So if we think about what it is we're attached to, like if we find that smell so seductive and we become really attached to it and really find it desirable, it's really not the body that we're attached to. It's something that is anointed to the body. And further on in the text, yet how is it that one thing's fragrance causes you to long for something else? So we see that it's the fragrance that attracts us, and we must understand that it's not, the body does not naturally smell like that. If we think about all those parts of the body and substances within it we just discussed, we must see the difference between those two. There's that which was anointed to the body and that which is the body. So as it says here, one thing causes you to long for something else. And further on it says, it is best to have no lust for something but that by nature stinks. And so again, we're back to the very nature. So the nature of the physical form is something that really has a lot of disgusting substances and smells. So that beautiful smell that we're smelling, that perfume, is absolutely not the body. So we cannot be confused about what we're attracted to. This is so true, isn't it? Now that we break it apart like this and we really dissect it like this uses really amazing logic and very, very, it speaks to truth. So if we have that, like a feeling of being like seduced and drawn in and really desirous of a body that's anointed in that smell, think about it. What is it we're really attached to? Is it the smell or the body? We must begin to look at that.
지단에다 지주 지금도 배 chemical 망부 중에 그진 코인데 갈라페 수수 샤드 톨라 다셔도 야보드미도
카리 촐라탄 카리 체네
라징기 따테 chemical 망 타주 주는 가로진이 샤드도 배 쪼보주 샤도
라소
제주 지금 마타나
라소
라징기 샤드 닌제도
네네네 야
그
랑징기 샤디 닌제도
띵닌제
šandak because
때가 지주디가 샤드 톨라 다셔도 가로진이 배 너는 봐 슈샤로도 때마주나
You know, you really think about it also, you know, that which we might at first glance perceive as beautiful is nothing but a covering of like makeup and blush and just different cosmetic things that actually, if they sat there for a while, they would just, you know, oxidize and turn really looking disgusting. Actually, they cover up what's, you know, we have the natural skin. That which we at first glance see as beautiful, those just actually putrefy. They become very old and very ugly. You know, not like the skin that is underneath.
야, 다 두주를 두고 깜빡 치만이 되다. 루주 reptin 가rel랍고 알아야잖아. 다 리단 델반 맥켄지 디델 차나 규정이요 말했어. 규정 맵이 공부 쓴 거 알아. 대기 가진 자기 인스 딩이 스스로 와서 리단 딩이 스스로 와서 다 뒤에는 차 먹고 규정도 쓴 거 알았어. 지텐 때문에 세바다 지텐 세대다 지텐 내봐서 간지 지텐 바스디가라 로 하장기 셈바 푸스도 보랑 진진 슈주모 연대게 딜이다 랑 진진 카마티킨 랑 진진 꽝라 슈주모 연대겐다 지텐 바스 지텐 때문에 세바다 지텐 바는 랑 ngachibo nganga samtandegendi eni 가서 던다 메베 류라니 차베 세바 류르 차베 세바 다 지데들 디짐 퀴스 근데 류 가르치는 데 류라 텐데 산델라 소바 디짐 보테 구구예스 원데 디짐 산데니스 디짐 보테는 산데니 티로 와스 산덴다 쿠르군다 다 텐데 티 가서 거부르다 텐데 티로 와스 산데니 류일람 dorna 지지 중세 젠기 디지 젠달라 지질 때는 차버제스 지티 젠기 디지 제네 딜라니 차과께서 끊음이도 와서 가르친 차거든요. 근데 딱 보니 시무지 세보승구도 지암 근데 차나 근데 얘네 배 젠기 딜라 차나 이거 말했어. 어때 제인도가라 그래서 야네양도 섬다나 되니 따뜻하니 레샤 삼삼 연구로 와. 때문에 잡잡적으로 가서 삼땅 땅에 돼.
And so now the second two in verse number 66 and verse 67. Druchu redun yang.
Redun.
Redun.
Redun kampa chimanida. Redun chatang.
Redun chatang. So now the last two lines of 66 and verse number 67. The worldly crave beside their purpose. Why do they anoint their flesh with pleasant scents? And so here it says the worldly, the worldly crave beside their purpose, meaning they're really craving things that lack any great meaning, something that's not very meaningful. And so why exactly, do they anoint themselves? So worldly people, meaning people that are really very, very caught up in material things, samsaric things, very narrow-minded, very self-centered, thinking, I want this, I want that, I want this for myself. They have all this great craving, but they're craving actually for that which is not purposeful. And, then they anoint themselves, feeding this into this like worldly and materialistic craving. And really, what's the point? For if this scent is sandalwood, how can it be the perfume of the body? How is it that the fragrance of a thing induces you to crave for something else? And so, if we really look at this and examine this, why is it that we are craving for one thing while it's something else that kind of was the initial attraction? It's nonsensical and inappropriate. And if you really look at it, you'll actually see that that's what's happening. If you examine this situation for yourself, you will see that what draws us in and that what we then find ourselves attached to are two different things. And so this is something you can examine for yourself, and you'll see that this is happening.
Yeah, that to you repket tang regu kampa tambuni de ganji tigan tu dua. Ti karla go raza tra ninjebo tra tang. Ani semorimo. Ani pe tweet chidorjene tendijene kun zemadan zebund was. Tendijena chaya yuzenji duazna. But then mare labre. Tate labre. Kalte trasen ringwatan socha diche dam kiti. Gubili ki rajini jibu jipachain as. Kira labda dembata rede ko inayang Luini tingamba kaya dan tende duas, Lui chirpu dana pe jisunwa chag duas. Wata tendi indigala, cheta tendi indigala, rang ne pe chunjin dus, rang la ne rang se ke chunja de rangi chidorchena, and chidorche range and pe tele sunkyop jigachen chipu chigyares, tende chapate da, ti karzana, tende cha dus chena. Any chapachi kenji, susuling Nebasaka, Nebasana kenji, any chadang musum tene, Zingi so chapa yunguar and Ramira yunguda. The
Kari yongire, chakdang
chadang kenjin, Zingi so chapa yungure, Tana Yawan Roya yungurwa. What are the Nebasagres? Neba Mobusaya chagare, and it Tindi Jevada, any rangi, any pe, Susu say at the Susu any Danyarja the Jibares.
And now in verse 68 and the beginning of 69. With lanky hair, with long nails overgrown, with dirty teeth all reeking with the stink of slime, this body naked as it is, untended, is indeed a horror to behold. And so that which initially attracts us, beautiful hair, nice long nails, beautiful straight gleaming teeth, and so forth, when we don't take care of these things and we just let them go untended, really think about, what that unclothed naked body would really, what would that look like? Nothing so beautiful to behold. Indeed, as it says here, it is a horror to behold. And then in the next two lines, we really see what are some of the misgivings and mistakes that happen due to us trying to tend and keep this beautiful body as tended and polished and beautiful. Here it says, why go to such excess to clean and polish what is but a weapon that will injure you? So we take such care of this body that, and then actually under the influence of attachment, aversion, ignorance, many afflicted mental states, we're driven to do things, really commit so many misdeeds, even go so far as committing murder that will lead us to the hell realms and much suffering. Actually, there are so many faults and sinful activities that we can engage in thinking we have this, this beautiful form or attached to a beautiful form. It is simply just leads us to many faults and misdeeds.
Zumbo trade majaze ka chego marta chapa kaya tontal te sungor modo jenda trade majada tende sungor mare ante pe khagare pe ta khagare chapa te pe luchare do ngoni chena nga lokhashi mama songan shushe kan dore songan mi ngone yabu tende mampo ani 간체 타마 차비켄지는 종강 랩죠 뺀망부도 이렇게 봐 로얌지니 젠얌지니 간체 첼라 갈와져에나 디미도
Sayamsana? Gonda.
로얌지니
Loyam di sopo. Okay, lasso.
첼레 갈와 답에 수수 줘발레 첼레 갈와 미 줘발레 갈선로 로얌제가 답에 덴디지디 갈라 팀다 갈러와 미 남조다 갈러와 어때서 이니 야부 말해 대저 셈라 또 맞아 단진치고도 어때 셈 단진어에 돈달을 순거로마도 젠게 말해 디니 집에 있는 수수 줘봐 야르고로와 현도야래
Lasso. Ani di tsongkang di arigi tsongkang di
아그리
gaba.
종간에 디
Ari,
단다 인디애나폴리스 거긴 남타운 다 녀버래
Oh,
벤필스사
Lasso. So Geshe-la would just like to point out that he's not saying, and the advice here isn't that we shouldn't take care of ourselves, that we shouldn't pay attention to hygiene. What what's the point here is to not be obsessed over our appearance, be, so obsessed that we want to, we're obsessing and then, looking even to use this body, as a lure, for example. Not to be obsessed over one's appearance, but yes, one should take care of one's health and one's hygiene. But when we really go too far to one side, some, really terrible terrible things can happen. And Geshe-la says that some time ago he went to visit a jail that is in Indianapolis near the airport, where so many of those that were incarcerated, were in, really quite pitiful, state. But they were, they were there being incarcerated due to the very things we're talking about. Many of them were there due to actions committed out of great desire, such as sexual misconducts and rapes and so forth, and doing some really terrible activities that are against the law and illegal. And these were driven by, desirous minds, afflicted minds. And, they were against the law, and they were things that are just really unnatural, things that are, just crimes against the human race. Crimes that are committed due to having a lot of self-clinging and a lot of attachment. Really wanting, being so craving and desirous for oneself and not thinking of others. Because when we really think about others, this doesn't feed our attachment and desires, it lessens it. But really being very self-centered feeds our own desires and leads us into actions such as these that I saw many of these that were incarcerated now playing out, the, having, to be imprisoned because of that.
어단 다 두주르고 강파 치마니 대당 dunju thamba dige karalabna ichu ne susamba stap pe karsore lulani chabamiri bate pe ti nentenjine sungore dala monpe bepa is ta monpa maibo onke dige bepa yi nyembe sandi kundu truth 당원으로 왔대. 차배왕 답에 sem 미시배왕게 차바기 차배왕게 센투데 답에 이치거라. 루공 바지 통나니 두트더니 이추나스. 답에 나랑도 리데 단데 리데당 두트레 베루공데니라 딱 제발 가려래. 지 바기동 되어래 지도 바파요 말대 대잠지를 마다. 대잠지마다 연배 루고 기참배 공기 tutul lagam 그 애니베 tutul 텐디지나 그 tutul 옆에 루곤다는 교가가 두고있어. 다때베 nem보저 삼다나 차발도에 핑기도와. 15pen 랍첨보리 nem보저 삼당 거래. 뱀미시버 개첨보 진의 삼당 거래. 뱀미시 내 첨보 차리가래. 거다 독수래.
And now we're in the end of last 269 and then verse number 70. The cares that people will squander on themselves in ignorance convulse the universe with madness. Here when it speaks about ignorance, this means just sheerly just not knowing, just really being unaware, uninformed, and not knowing. And if we think about it, in those kinds of states, it starts with kind of this dullness of ignorance and inattentiveness. And then this ignorance turns into sheer, unbridled desire or other emotions that take us to a point where we're just not feeling that emotion. We become crazy. We really become maddened and taken over by those mental states. We get so upset and we really even go mad. And when you saw the heaps of human bones you felt in the charnel ground, and will you take delight in the cities of the dead frequented by such skeletons that live and move? And now we really stop and pause and think about it. What really is the difference between this very body we have right now and those bodies in the graveyard? The only difference is that we might have skin right now and they don't have any skin. Besides that, there isn't really, any difference. And this is something that is important for us to contemplate and to think about and to mull over. Because it's really a tremendous point. And when we take time to ponder and reflect on this, it's very, very important. These are important things and points to think about, and they're very, very true.
Yeah, that's 군산당의 주수지 로샤.
Okay, so already an hour has gone by, so let's take a break here. Let's have a tea break.
Yeah, 당아죠. 양경 고주게.
Okay, shall we begin? Is everyone back?
다 쇼로가 두주 레직 받으러와. dunju tenji pade.
Really?
Ota ta nempu chile gorta yangur nempu chene la gore. Tembas temba da shepa ta kanji nyumu kyen je ta sepi kyen je ta paja zoru yore.
No la so.
Te ta misan gru ta kanji chayul kebilunanda bumelunanda misanulu des so chayul kan chabake yulde yuate rimme pani minye dos ta oni chik ta meson gengen tikite kebaina bumena meson gengen tik te rimme bada ragmare teden tuba shatanta nyala so banno barkirus tape ngazo lui tangdang yebe galla tape migo atende sheji cheni ani pe dijine kewachima nyawan roi yusagdu was indi chigyo mare labre tatsele galwe tichibaina ani jaka gwe tim gal ani ki rala nyeba chimbosa kewachima nyawan roi ati ani tus chene tharbugun ga gorwa otate langore.
And so we pick up in verse number 71, where we once again turn back to reading about the teachings or instructions on applying antidotal forces or remedies. And at this juncture in the text, the faults of attachment and craving and so forth, we're moving past those. We're moving on to kind of a new subject about the fault of craving. But now here we do look at, in this next verse, it reads, "What's more, possession of another's filth is not to be acquired free of charge." So here we're talking about, what it is that we're attached to, be it, member of the, the opposite sex's form, or whatever the object of our attachment and obsession is. It doesn't come without a price. It doesn't come without fault and without price. And further on it says, all is at a price: exhaustion in this life, and in the next, the suffering of hell. And so due to having this feeling of attachment or obsessing over an object of our attention and attraction, we commit misdeeds. We commit negative activities that will actually be the cause of an unfavorable birth in the hell realms, for example, in the next life. Because what we're doing is, out of these emotions, we're creating the karmas, or creating the causes for this. We're creating different karmas. We're creating karmas that are the cause of unfavorable rebirths in the next life. But not only that, actually, they cause us to gain, for example, if we do something illegal and against the laws, punishment in this life, and then hell in the next life.
다 린치 땡이 빠데 더바슨 베까메 바스다 대순거래 다 집안 너플 미니페스 집바스데다 단다데 집바스디가라 가서 로나 마슴바 찍제 삼로페 푸스토보다 니제 니 똥이 마도 베칸사다 숨 집바 과 숨요와 다다디 로나 마슴바드레 집바 충충 다 로나 마슴베 집바 근데 갈라 너 벤저 야르게 타야 텐데 요 마르와타 코라 고도 랑고 튼거 말에 와다 집반 너플 미니페 달라 파파 비치데스 너서 파에 세투나 에게는 더바 지지자스 다 부춘주 갈라 더 코라운라 직 더바체기 삼로 연구와 말에 로나 마슴바 인자 아니 로나 순티 아니 다 유벤저 사야만 따지 덴데게랑 고코르도 와래 에게지 코든 루빈 주왕냠도 갈라 양 더바체기 디응과 말에 덴디다 더바티 시라 규제 민도 갈라 거래.
Yeah. And so here in the text, verse number 72, to gather riches young boys are unable, and what can they enjoy when they are full grown? The whole of life is spent in gaining wealth, but then they're old, too old to satisfy their lust. And here it says, young boys are unable, and we have this word young. Which can actually mean, the word in Tibetan actually has three meanings. When we talk about here, it's translated as young. But this very word can also, so it can mean young in years or young in age, but also it can mean immature, and young meaning very narrow-minded. Someone who really has not advanced out of a very immature mental state, or it can mean someone who has not realized emptiness. In this case, where Shantideva is using it, it means young in years, because when we're kids, we don't have our eyes set. on gaining all kinds of things, on materialistic things. Our mindset isn't that yet. We haven't advanced to that point. Yet when we do get to that point, as we get into an older, more mature age, then when we're focused on spending all this time gaining all kinds of material wealth and possessions and all kinds of things, but before long, we're too old, and then we find no satisfaction in them.
다 리탄다이나다 다 젠기이나다 더바텐베 까비나 리탄체디나 더바텐 두 마레스 다데까지 시고래 덜댕엠바 카지니 니린 레강 용두기 김동원의 차 체필리 로단다버 냐바제스 왔다 간지 리응알지 탄체도 론다버 차네니 수준 더바텐에게
And so here in verse number 773, this is in relation to the different the different periods of either being energetic or fatigued, and how it affects our desires and obsessions and so forth. Where it says, some are wretched in their great desire, but worn out by their day-long work. They go home broken by fatigue to sleep the slumber of a course. So although when we're wanting and desirous, we get, kind of revved up and charged. And yet in our ordinary daily, work, we get all worn out, and then we're spent. And then we just, lie down like, can, as they say, sleep like the dead.
유기 갈pen the beton that tapas ta dunjitenji pade kachi jet to nyamantans rindu so dual gens pumen de pumen me kyukor loriang tongmin jurus wata ti karela garzana ta nyumong sedigala sem rabdu majiba sem tupa sem nadu manikanjila nyumong sigorwa ta nyumong tata ngasura nyumong ji masari ji keyong gorwa nyumong sigindi jeto ji masargan la ji keyong la jeto masogon la ji yongore rangi yuli ringdu songwe dungal jingi pumeda tayong degala ta 더진도 부메 가실라 딱 메라땅에 가실라 또라땅에 다데 배 덴디기 딴 라미나 연구하러 와. 어때 텔라거래. 덴디치 거래. 너 빠세 맞지지매. 저왔다 덴디 불코르데다 콜로나지 꼬르고 알아도 쓰지. 불코르나지. 참 맞춰봐지. 어때 덴디 균치기 말했어.
Okay, don't do Geshe Jinpa. And now verse number 74. Some wearied by their travels far from home must suffer separation from their wives and children whom they love and long to see, and they do not meet with them for years on end. And so here, okay, Gonda Kanigeshila Triwachikir, di sikche di serpodo, yanayang di nyomong trepa, he drelwa ani kandres ko 아니 가직 제존 요몽
같이 제종 녀몽 당세다
두송
다 녀몽세다 셈라도 마지바 셈투바 셈나도 메네 켄질라 녀몽시거와 녀몽지 마저데 지 제초세디가라 지 마저데라 양지 켄거와
Okay, I'm wondering if I have a mistake in my English, so one moment while I check my text. Okay, so perkela priyakla dene kachik che tro nyomongtang.
같이 제초 녀몽다 린도소에 동알진스 부면 대신 부면 남 출골 농장 통민주로스
Okay, so I'm hearing Geshe-la's explanation of verse 74, and it does not meet, it's not meeting my English.
같이 세대가라 리지 세존르지레 리지 제초스데 녀몽 아니 제초스 엄마데 마사리 치마
La.
베토 엄마 마조달라 치마 양녀몽 깽고라 제초 마조
Really, Desabodo, somebody from the travels far from home. You know, Injikela, Dene Yun Ring, Ani Tak Ringpo di Nang La Tak Ringpo Drona di Pokelamando. Yeah, it doesn't match. So here in my text in verse number 74, this is what I have. Some obliged to travel far abroad must suffer separation from their wives, from children whom they love and long to see. They do not meet with them for years on end. Can anyone clarify if that's what they have?
I got the same. I pasted it in the text.
Okay.
The chat, I mean.
Okay.
I mean, it's slightly different.
Okay. It's a little different. So Geshe-la is explaining it, Geshe-la's explanation, and like what's here in my text does not match. So, and actually my own Tibetan in my text doesn't match this either.
Jason, you read?
Yes. Some wearied by their travels far from home must suffer separation from their wives and children whom they love and long to see. They do not meet with them for years on end.
Yeah, I have the same. Nala chikpare yanayang di koso di bumo dang trugogi korlare. Koso di trugogi korlare di poyek yang.
부면 대신 부면 매세다 부면 대신 시다 출골 농장 통민주로스
Right, kachik chedro.
같이 세대가라 리지세다 직발했다 같이 세야다 리지세야다 같이 주된 녀몽다 녀몽다 지마서 지해야 랑기 아니 rindu son lungal chingi bume ta tepar de jindu bume la bume nam yurindu kyu kollutar tomar gyuna de batan ba chi cha stabe dirwa di hago da riji mi samlo de kenzaring ngora mi nga 좀 mi samlo lungal chingi bume ta tepar de jindu bume yurinbo 큐바만이 맞아 다 큐바 시디가라 잡아줘야 될 것 지치고 와. 큐 시디가라 불고르네지 때 콜로나지 야네도 조야매 봐. 통민주르스 덴디지는 너바 셈바데 간디지 용 Kukur, Lukan Tomin Yursitat, Teniji any pay, the Bade, Junamian, Ten Young, Tenan, Unimutin, Young Mares,
Okay.
did it in you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to just explain what Geshe explained here. So yeah, it's just, it doesn't match. The Tibetan and this English translation does not match up. So I'm going to just not try to match it with what it says here in our text, and I will explain to you what Geshe explained. Because here in the very first line of Tibetan, it speaks about the afflicted mind of someone. A person, someone who is mentally afflicted. And so that's, here it says some wearied by travels far from their home, but really this, Geshe says that it means when someone, whoever it is upset, they have a bit of upsetness and they suffer. And then actually, so you have this afflicted mental state, but one negative emotion feeds the next. So from one negative emotion comes the next negative emotion. Then from that comes the next negative emotion. And actually, we have no peace of mind and we get all worked up. Because what happens is from the very first negative emotion, it fed into the next, which fed into the next. And before you know it, they're really proliferating. And here it says that when we have a separation from their loved one or their spouse, then from not being together for a long time, actually the longing desire stops. That chain of one emotion feeding into another, is broken. That chain broken. They don't meet with that chain of unbroken proliferation of negative emotions. But generally what happens is that we have negative emotions and it's very sick. It just circles. One feeds into another, and they're never ending. It kind of circles along.
Yeah. Jamba, Juru Tanya would the Jamba Mide. Jamba.
Does anyone else have a different translation by any chance of 74? Laso, okay, Geshe dila ringdu songwe dungal chen di ringdu songwe sena di kapsu kare ringdu songwe di injikela di kemen di bu
the kemen's the misel lawamara chayul chapiyul de tap bume kebala chagina kebad ring song chadwa haringbon denato hirwa.
Oh, laso. Dene dis ngune da ringdu songwe, ringdu tongwe.
Oh, ringdu tongwa. Tabe dawa lo enipe pa katen de de kachigore.
Oh, laso. So here it says, I asked Geshe about they must separate from, must suffer separation from their wives. But actually, and it doesn't say anything about wives in this line in Tibetan, but afterwards it does speak about, one's woman, one's girl. But Geshe says this is whatever it is that we find ourselves really obsessing over and super attached to, really fixated on, that the more distant and the more time that goes by, then we no longer have these, strong emotion that is connected with whatever the object of our attachment is. It will no longer affect us like this.
Yeah. Chayul the ringu sonta 윤림부 파게 제손다 윤림부트 잡아제 요마라
Lasso.
어다 인디 갈다 잡아 가르 중앙이다 부이나 부메다 탭바 부메이나 부다 탭바 너진도 부메 윤림부 다이 가레나 지 귀게 귀내네 데르베 윤림부 때네 자데 때네 마부지 통화 민주르스 때네 마부 윤림부 때네 제 영어 말했어
Nyomong denso.
때네 너바테 맞지 자스 때네 인도가
So here, so here, you know, it says they do not meet with them for years on end. But what they're not meeting with, actually what's meant here, is that if we distance ourselves, you know, in time, if we put some distance between ourselves and whatever it is, our object of attachment, we don't come in contact with that for a long period of time, then we will not meet with the suffering, like our emotional upheaval that comes from, you know, being connected with them. So if we detach from them in time and distance, then we'll no longer have the emotional upheaval. So that's what we're not meeting with, is the difficulties that come from whatever it is that we obsess over and are attached to. So if we separate ourselves, give ourselves time and distance from them, we also won't meet with the suffering.
Yeah, that got it, didn't you?
Dunga, hey.
Didn't you tell about that? That Jendo want to purpe, Mindopa, Tuma, Tomas, that Ruata, that didn't you tell about that? Didn't you meet the shake your that? Vala Penda Namong Bess, counting to Zombo, Zombayang, the Moton or Tomepe. Zengi leki lungin des. Tandi karala gorada. Ta Java conditioner ranla pen topper dobala. Doba Java the tubala tap de la mona. Java tubia tap jorwa. The machina. Any Java the took to Marva. Any Nepa, Kim Mambu Ungris. Turning you at any Tamar Rang Louis Zombam, La Nepa, Maton Rala Pembe, Tumeba Tepe, Java Mambuji, Tumeba Mambuche Ungris. The Indiala Zungalji Nyon Dope, Tontor. Tendi lugalata lungalgi zeta mebaji pe dobe tonde to be mepe lungalde zeba mebaji yongure tendi gala tendi chigi amares kaje karina tap the sheva tambu jawa tuba dal jawa te jegi tap the shewa pe kechmores tap the machine na teni pe nyota mambuto yongures
Ani karichin the dribble ani ze ani
tap the machine jawa kanji tuna pena mazo 총지 개나 총 갭상 갭루 갭나 개변 가서 요한테 차단시 세고라 대 마시나 다 서서히 갭이나 다 경포네 배 디부 제밤에 바지 온 거라
오케이
동al 단데 봐 자와 간이잖아 당보 자와들 두발라 자와되게 용상 용루 탑디 양 따바지 장고를 세고 씹어지 거래라고
And now in verse number 75, which really speaks about us losing our control or independence in a situation and then really ending up with an unbearable suffering result, where it says, some ambitious for prosperity, not knowing how to get it, sell themselves Happiness eludes their grasp, and pointlessly they live and labor for their masters. And what we really have to take out of this verse here, when it really comes down to it, is whatever one does, one is likely doing to get like some kind of desired result. One wishes to bring about some benefit or a desired result. But if you don't know how exactly the method of doing it, like what to do in order to get that result, one could be very, very mistaken and instead bring about some mistaken result or some kind of difficulty or something very troublesome. We could end up really getting into a very overwhelming and unbearable situation, because it's really the method that we need to know. We really need to be very educated about how to go about something, or what we bring about might not be that which we want. We might bring about trouble for ourselves, for example. And so looking for an example of that, for example, let's say we want to engage in some kind of business. We want to have, be in business. And but if we don't research what exactly to do, so we're going to want to make sure that the business is profitable, right? We want to bring about some benefit and some profit. But if we enter into it not really knowing what we're doing at all, then we could end up into a lot of really big, trouble, really an undesirable result. So you really must know about the method to go about something.
그래서 디네게 탑라 몽송엔지나 녀자데 갭메 메슈 춤부지 따니 베 사다 수변데도 막 다지 다니면서잖아 칼라메 균 촐란도 그러와 돈다데 두야 메게 제가 간디 자와 간디지나 땅고 탑들라 장바이 아버지 탑디 그 간디지 용구도 차상지 쉐버째고 그래들라고 왔다.
So it's really so very true. And we can take another example, let's take an example of wanting to eat. That's the desired end result that we're looking for. We want to be able to eat. So in order to be able to eat, then we have to have some understanding of cooking the food. If we have, are totally ignorant and have like no understanding of how to go about cooking the food, let's say, we put it on the burner and we turn the heat, way up, and we just end up burning it all. So what is in the end result is that we have no food, and the food that we did try to cook is completely wasted. And so whatever it is to really accomplish your desired result, what it really takes knowing the method to do it. We must really, really study and understand the method to bring about the desired, result of what we want our activities to produce. We must study and, we must be informed.
Don't do but mare.
Really, don't do pare.
Don't do padre. 다 라오메가 뉴도 손도 와스 다 제가 마시 두시베나 아니 타마데니 베 경드랑라 포그레라고 하다 라라랑기 리체칭 와메 젠기 꼴주데 중마다장 비중나 신중 공바 밤밤 중세 숭도 다에 tense to call yobo and that yobo ten chingin de la ta la jaina chita yomarwa and kale mangbu yaboya what up chick jengi kulju want to sone and then it chigre then in la chuma ta ja pujuna rangi kimme 다 오다 텐디기 간제 김미나라 다 동할 텐데 나르슨 바빠 망부 용그레스 다 텔라고 다마니 베 텐디지 강알 망부테 에네 다마랑게 이게 에네 베다 용도 가제 아니 김베나라 부부주 소경 망부제 다마게 진 코이데 부부주게 펜토야 메바지네 에네 베 시부지 강알 테기도 다마게 지고 부부주 부부 파마마사 아니 파마게 텐디제 강알 챙에 망부 용도 와 대조래 인조
And so in the next verse, we continue to look at what is the cost of losing independence in a situation, of no longer like being in control, informed and aware and in control. And this is verse number 76. Some sell themselves no longer free, in bondage, slavery to others, and destitute. Their wives give birth with only trees for shelter in the wild.
Chipare, atate, nelogure. The Pelu Lambatas, the Pe, the Pa, the Luis and Gogoro Sunday, me, Jambumekin Lambatas. Sunday Sower, Jaoji, Sotor, Virgin Yudunju, Chichitendu, Norges, Tatemone.
Okay, and so first verse number 76. So here we use, we see the term in bondage, in slavery to others. So with no longer having freedom, no longer having this freedom and independence, they are now enslaved. And when we say, enslaved, when we think about slaves, the slaves receive no salary for all of the hard work. They labor and toil with absolutely no profit, no benefit. They work so hard. They do whatever another one is actually forcing them into. And then in this way, how many problems do they meet with? And so this verse, shows here that, enslaved, that, they don't end up in a very favorable circumstance. And so, for example, as well, within a family, if the parents don't look after the children, if they don't know the right way of bringing up and looking after the children, and they don't pay attention to this, in the end, look at all the kind of trouble that they end up meeting with, that, the children and they themselves end up meeting with, all the kind of difficulty the children end up giving them. And in the next verse, it's a little bit the same in verse number 77, where it says, fools deceived by craving for a livelihood. So again, fools here meaning, those that are, not totally with it on watching out for what they should be watching out for. So fools deceived by craving for a livelihood decide that they will make their fortune in wars through fearful of their lives, and seeking gain, it's slavery they get.
Yeah, that Sholoka tuju red.
Don't get pa
Or Tunge Patre, Tunge Pata, Tungugi, Kampa, Tampu Nidelegate Saro. Resha. Tati Karlago Residgala, Jengi Wandu, Jurchins, Lungalmaso, Jundu del Was, Tangal the Chiti the Pe, Lungalgi, Jellyongi, Ungres. Then Lala, Luikanche, Kachi Sajin Zella Tu, Kachi Duntu Raki Num, Kachi Sepa Takan Nang, Setan Sungla Lapran Dunwai, Norni, Puntul, Tai Sheparchas, Tengonita, what a dustine, the bus than that, the Yunsigora, Zunda, Tiro, Rejata, you Chalangopu Kangareta, the Inchadiore. Tendelani Hachang is a batch muchana, Tea Tontala, Luce Bayungore, eh? Any Yalbodan Tendigi, Yalka Tinton, session is set in Kumbatende Younger or and a Chepe Genjin Duntuda, Raji Chepa, swinging Numbalas, but then a monk was any nor Savlas Tape nor Sa Sumat with one Mambuda, Tatiki Chizungor. The way is a Dungal Chili Chipet, some much of a younger is that the Nidala, Kaji, the Jun Tayon younger and the Jun Toshi chatted to Yungor or Tatisungor.
And here in verse number 78 and the beginning of 79, where this really speaks to the suffering that one will always be connected to when one is enslaved by another, meaning enslaved by afflictions, enslaved without independence. And so here in 78, some as the result of craving have their bodies slashed, impaled on pointed stakes. Some are wounded, run through by the lance, while some others are put to death by fire. The pain of gaining, keeping, and of losing all. See the endless hardship brought on us by property. So true. We have what's called here craving in our text, or desiring. These things that we desire through our different, these objects of the senses, the sense pleasures, the things that satisfy us sensorially, be it form and smells and sounds and sensations and so forth, these things that attract us and then really hook us, that we get attached to. When influenced and driven by such craving, think of all the things that we can encounter, as it says here, being, being physically killed, being slashed, our body impaled. All of this craving harvests upon us so many difficulties and so, many terrible results. And the reality of it is it's never ending. When it comes to craving, we just keep going and to get these experiences, and we end up experience never-ending suffering, and we've lost our independence.
Don't you?
Dun gupagi tama
Oh, Dinju Tamatang, Gajuba the Chadi Rada. What I think Carla Gores, the Tarpan Gage, Stanagan Suta, Maransu Chetata, the end Shu Chapat teaching it. That teaches the gala, any Tarbat engaging. Talwa get Jurua Chusam Milite, chooses Tamba, Pulatamba. Then the Tangores. What a teacher got it. Norla Chap the young one grew on Sibi Zungal letter Kametos. That Norla Haja, Chajan Shimbuchevena, and it Kurwale, Kurizungal and Delegi, cook up Junior Marella or touch it. Oh, the then tell us so, Nimi Mangla, Nurchung days. That Nimi Zenita, Jun Manguyores, Nurchung day. Shintan Dembi, Chutaki, 자니 감지 접어진스 당하랑서 가르쳐거래 딘디기 신디디 시부 진짜 심치주 좀뭐지 유벤저 사긴데 개와테 삼삼들라 엄마는 빼면 홍디서 삼삼들 나가지고라 이제데 신단 dengen기 추여로 앞에 시디께 신단 dengen기 섬진 따당 라울라 따당 마일로서 봐 신단 되네 갑라 짝 함지사데 존디지마도 시작에 펜도요 말때 이제 두 가와냥 다바지 이제 두고 말이스 인데라다베 맞지 신디레 하장 진짜 유벤절 하장 진짜 제는 된다버지래 시작 된디지기요 말때니나 수수 미제트 트라안 두고 말이스 저와 치마네 땡기 센서데 두고 말이스 순고
Ani kabar lapstong di ani gum dunchu dunchu
dungu kampa chima gyachupade
oh laso. Now the end of 79 and verse number 80, where this really looks at us being in a situation where we have this precious human body, or we have the human body, complete with the 18 freedoms and endowments, and yet we're throwing it away because we can't reach liberation due to our desires towards rich, being rich and loving our money and so forth. And here it says, those distracted by their love of riches never have a moment's rest from sorrow's existence. They indeed, possessed of many wants, will suffer many troubles, all for very little. Mouthfuls of hay the oxen get as recompense for having pulled the cart. And so if we find ourselves in a situation where we're really attached to making our living, to really just growing and growing and growing our money, and we really have a great love for our money, it's said actually that we are, that the being liberated from samsara is now out of our reaches. Because in this life, if we're so concerned with just making money and making money, growing that nest egg, although we may say occasionally here and there, we may take time to do, a money mantra here and there and practice a little. It's only like, for example, when horses and oxen that need to, pull carts and plow fields, occasionally, they get a little hay to eat and they can eat a little grass, but mostly they can't, do anything that they want. They get this occasional carrot, so to speak, but they never can accomplish very much at all. And if we find ourselves in this life that our real focus and, we're fixated kind of on making money, that actually we will not be able to really make full use of this life in a way that can really assure ourselves to really get the full happiness, like the true happiness of liberation for the next life. We just cannot do that if we're focused on money. The occasional money mantra will not do it.
What 신단 dengen 게 디디게들라 답에 파기 신세 나보되게 답에 신다 마두나 슈구슈구 답에 때 그것이잖아 슈구시라요 말와 뭐다 때나 이제 가좀 너차다 가서 그래 너연의 차배 너연의 세배 아니 차바 너연 뺐던 등여데 대왕기 다 전부지 그와냐 그와 양다바지도 분소바지 요해요 말와 이거는 딘디 가랑 좀 미 남주도 차상주 트라 다셔와 달와게 저와 주상에 밀리데 미시부 톱 가보러와 주스 상서다 트라 담바르스 거라 주스 바시도 갈라 배 자 추나를 야즈니 가진 빼주면 차도구로 자 추나를 자잖아 자 아론 추나를 가로지니 야자네는 매매 차도구도 어때나 진지 나란도 아니 내일 치라 차네 미 남주도 뺐다가 레위초라 기르마토 했더니 용거래 그래도 컴바 당보 수준 내려봐지 컴바지 삼당 거와 대더니 빼미 갸치르다 드니 갸치르제 가져 컴바 전부 이 강박의 여부 윤대긴 소리 진대구도 대 덴디지리 과다 뜻도 지겨 말을라 그래
So we think about the experience of those, like farm animals and animals that, are forced to plow fields and pull heavy loads and, how often can they really accomplish that, which, is meaningful. Actually, even when if they're beaten to go faster and work harder, and then sometimes even if they bend their head down to take a little bit of grass, then, their owner is whipping them to get their head back, in the game and back in their work. And actually, it's a bit like that for us. We're enslaved by our emotions of attachment and craving. They drive us like a whip. They drive us like a whip, and then actually we're not accomplishing anything good and virtuous and meaningful. And it's really such a waste, actually, because then our own, human intelligence is wasted. And if you think about it, having the freedom and the endowments that we actually have obtained is incredibly difficult and rare to attain these things, to, be able to accomplish the Dharma. And then enslaved by our fixation, obsessions, and emotions, we don't practice the Dharma. We become unpliable, unworkable, in the way that, for example, when we have like a molten iron and then it's placed in water, it's no longer like palleable. We can no longer move it and mold it. We can't work with it anymore. And we become very much like that, non-pliable, when we're enslaved by our emotions or by our desire in this life for more and more riches and wealth. For example, if we're so driven to have like this nice big house, we don't want to just have a house. We want a big house. We want a mansion. We want something really nice. Then when we get it, we're like a slave to that big house. We have no freedom and independence. We really become enslaved by that house and then are no longer accomplishing what's meaningful. This is actually a very, very important point for us to think about.
다 디인주마데 쇼로겠지 다 예주게지 바데
나서
슈크 좀 남이 건데 너주 관계 대던도 다저 손이 레긴 나와 남기 좀 숨도아 다들 가르쳐 거라 단단한 좀미 남줘요래 미 남줘야되가라 단데 셈기 지대데 미 남줘더니 찾아 녀모를 견뒀다 잠바당 이지도 공부도 땅 투비야지 열어봐. 근데 배 너베던 탐제 투투비야. 중알 탐제 셀 투비야. 단데 미 남제라. 대 돈으로 리섭체나 돈으로 된디 요마래. 돈으로 그 리섭 전부여 나양 랑볼을 쳐봐 빼톱 전부래. 엔따다지도도 채와도 디진의 톱 뉴바 전부여 왔대. 근데 투비야게 남제도 요마래 건서. What Tendi Indigala, Maranzo, Terigi, Namje Yabo, Talwai Pun Soba Ben, Joa Pun Soba, Diniji Tobetida, and this Sepa de la Pe, Gundostane, and he Legi, Joachima Legi, Neminto the Yami and the Samta, Lucine, the Zupe, Kazo took to Gundostane, and he nyumola nyimi de talwa yet jorwa chusawe talvesen le ningulen to ba chegure se tesure
Ningulen.
ningulen to ba talvesen la ta milito ba tantan temba milito ba kochopa e gawayang ta ba chugure se sur ta tere.
Okay. And now we'll read another verse, verse number 81. The cattle's fodder, not so very rare, and for the sake of such a petty thing, tormented by their karma, they destroy this precious human life so hard to find. And so we think about the intelligence that we have. We have this really incredible human intelligence. We have this human intelligence that can take us so far and accomplish so much, but also has the great potential for afflicted mental states to increase and increase as well. But we do have this incredible human intelligence and incredible potential. And you know, and we're looking at it in particular, how when we have great craving and desire, it really wastes our human intelligence. And if you think on the other side, if you think about animals, for example, although they may have, you know, really strong bodies, they may be incredibly strong or maybe quite ferocious. We think about the great strong animals like the great elephants and horses and so forth, incredibly strong bodies, physiques, and the fierce tigers and jaguars with the sharp teeth that can, you know, really just have so much potential there as well, but they don't have intelligence. They don't have intelligence that will allow them to accomplish desires, to make progress. They don't have that, but we have it. We have that potential of intelligence, and not only that, we have the freedoms of choice and endowed with, and you know, so the 18 freedoms and different advantages that this human existence allows us. Craving can actually take it all down. So we must always think about how our wanting and craving and desirous attitudes can really bring this all to waste. And not only that, we should think about the karmas and actions that we accumulate under their influence, driven by those different emotions and cravings. And think about the full maturation of the result of those actions in the future. So we should think about this and really place fault in this fixation and craving and being hooked on things. And always remember that we have these 18 freedoms advantages, and that we should use them to do well. We should use them for authentic and good practice, meaning virtuous and good activity in the world.
Yeah, diga jana mare.
So shall we stop here in the text and maybe maybe we have some time for questions and answers though.
Question yen that tarpas yada samtang what peke chimburta. Tarpalang gauge ching sido tarpa sidigala karil targore. Letang, migive letang, numule. The tarwala, Ranzi Maripale, Targu, Maripan, Kaudo. Maripa Kapala, Maripata, Mishib Maripa Chiche. Rinzing Maripa, Tat Hartuna, Rinzing Nawaka, Lember the body. Then Miss Vacation Borda. Let on you Zebeter, let on you Namtole, Teta Trouble, somebody can go up to see at the city, like Yanni on the sometime with Pen Miss Lechembody.
So yes, please, in a moment we'll have a question and answer. If you have any questions, then you can feel free to ask. But actually, before we get into that, Geshe said that he would just like to bring something back up and back to our attention. And that is, you know, so we talk about being liberated and needing to, like, we're speaking about the things that prevent us from being liberated. And so we need to think about, what does liberation mean? Okay, liberation means to be free from something. In Tibetan, the translation is to be separated from something, to be free, to be beyond something, to be free from something. And what is it that we're looking to gain freedom from? We're looking to gain freedom from karmic action and from afflicted emotions. And so in order to do that, then we must have self-clinging and ignorance. We must bring them to a cessation. And as you know, we must bring them to a cessation. So we say self-clinging and ignorance need to come to a cessation. And what needs to come to a cessation is for us to cling to any reality in the appearances that we see. This is something that we must bring to an end. And just like it was said in, as Nagarjuna said, in the Precious Garland of the Middle Way, when he spoke about the definition of liberation, he said that liberation is the exhaustion of karma and the afflictions, the perpetuation of proliferating elaborations coming from karmas and afflicted mental concepts will cease by the realization of emptiness.
Can you repeat that once, the Nagarjuna, please?
Yes, and I think I posted it, or I had Doug post it up on the IBC, one of the groups. Liberation is the exhaustion of karma and the afflictions. The perpetuation of proliferating elaborations coming from karma, the afflictions, and mental concepts cease by the realization of emptiness. And it should be on the IBC, like a study group, I think. And also, so just as a translator's note, when I was mentioning to Geshe earlier that I noticed that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I noticed some of the quotes that Geshe often uses. His Holiness used this, I think, one Saturday, Friday or Saturday. Quoted this, Nagarjuna. So does anyone have a question?
I have a question, if I might. So we talk a lot about negative emotions, but it also seems like there are some positive functions of emotions that we never really talk about. Like, for example, we would maybe think of fear as a negative emotion, but in certain contexts, if you're afraid of a tiger, then it's an appropriate emotion. Or if attachment is a negative emotion, but in the context of a parent to a child, it's a positive emotion because it allows for that child to thrive, because you want to take care of it in a way that you might not otherwise without feeling that emotion. So I just wondered if Geshe would speak to the positive uses of emotion and how we distinguish between the two.
Okay. Okay, Geshe dire di nyomong gi kolore nam gyun ngatso di nyomong di namtok denso di nyomong re pana di lekpecha dang kyun pecha ni yorwa dene nam gyun di nyomong denso di kyun pecha gi chola ani dogi yore. Yena yang sam yang pena jikpa. Ani jikpa ani sena di fear. Di jikpa sena di namgyun di nyomong tsigi yore te. Sam pena di tak zin ani trena dene jikpa di lakpecha ani dogi yogere denang jen pena di dochak pena di chakpa ngato di bugu la machakna dene yapotagi yomare dene tsam nyomon serie dentro di lakpechar ani yuna
nyomula lek pichad yode nyomula kyundu tana nyomung se yobate nyomung lek pichadre lekchad yoshode tereta ko kyundu tana ko zegi yorwa
laso bena kong ani lapa nangjen pena ngato di bugu la ani chakpa that's mena yapotagi yomare jekpa kangyang mena
chakpa mare zewa singde pe misiwa kechembore
laso
bula zewa jigugurawa chakpa singde 타지도 네거티브지
라소
부를 제와데 보지 다 개와 차디로 와
라소
맞아 가르잖아 맞아 누가 깨야 돼 녀모 저게 누가 깨는데 녀모를 견제지고 거라 녀모를 견제지는 견도 통내나 될 죽음하러 와
라소 데네 직페기 페디 파나 아토기 딱 파나
아다지라
tatang zikla ani trena ngato jikpa mena ngato tragi yomare ngato tragore yaman
tata zila ta ko 가르쳐오래
mena ngato la ani jikpa mena ani tragi yomare
죽음하러
dene jigere
tati tata zila 꼼대겐데서 죽음이도 당연한서 마곰겐 아니 미도 만데겐 따뜻서 다 가르쳐오래 리다 미다 만데겐 답에 미단 디뉴메겐 따 대수당연 또 디낭 아주 만지나 뭐 죽마로 마드나 딱 거의 맞아 소소고 내가요 와 그때는 지나 죽으러 와 그때 갑자기 내가 갑자기 그 포지티브 차버려 돼 지바대 지단은 지바코나 망쳐야 돼 망하대 다 되는 지나대 미거월은 지나 거와래 이거월은 지나 미거와래 교파테서
개월 직나
개월은 지나 미거와 차도로
oh laso
직파 세디가라 코 딜린지는 때 민주야지로와
laso di sungpe ani gomchen denso consola jikpa kangyang ani kego mare
니제 하자 니제 너 콤펜드로나 되니 지발레요 말에 심진진기 니제 톱기 심진진기 때라 너치 코라 말에 니제 연된데 때여다
so on one positive thing about the positive thing about negative emotions is that we can find fault in them, and in finding fault in them, we can eradicate them. So in that way, negative emotions become positive. But looking more closely at the examples that you gave, for example, that with, parents being somewhat attached to their children is what allows them to take care of them. Geshe said, actually, we must make a distinction between attachment and love. And it's love of the parent towards the child that we're looking at that really is the impetus for them to watch after them well. So this is the difference between what we call attachment and what we call love. And so that's one thing that's important to know. when we look at negative emotions, trying to pinpoint, so I asked Geshe about the negative side and the positive side of emotions, and how can they serve on both sides. And the negative emotions cause us to suffer. And this is something we must identify and acknowledge. Negative emotions cause us to suffer. So then we look at fear, like you mentioned. If you come across a tiger or a wild animal, and Geshe said, absolutely, if you do not have fear for these wild animals that we usually don't cohabit with, and they can be fierce, then they can pose a danger to our own life. And so in this way, fear in that instant protects our life. But actually, those with great meditation and those that have developed incredible compassion could not for an instant, they couldn't generate fear against the most fiercest of animals. They have nothing but love. Fear doesn't arise. And that's the difference between great meditators and and great compassionate, experienced, realized practitioners and us. We need to have that fear to protect our lives and so forth. But for really high practitioners, fear is not even an issue. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So anyways, in ending that, Geshe said that, so yes, emotions can play both a positive and a negative side. So there are, some positivities. Any other questions?
I had a question about some of the verses from last week and some of the verses from this week. The verses where Shantideva goes through and is sort of going through all the negativities of the human body and, trying to get the audience to sort of detach themselves from lust. I appreciate that Geshe also mentioned that, the precious human rebirth, like, even though this body comes from lust, this is the vehicle that we have for liberation. And a thought that came to me last week that I didn't get to ask at the time, previously, I think it was either Pabanka's Lam Rim or the Bardo Tildo, where after a person dies and they're in the Bardo state, you have this vision of all these couples that are copulating, and what the Bardo being sees is all these beings, and then they're attracted to one, and it might actually be like a trap where you take rebirth as an animal or as a being in the lower realms. And when I put that teaching together with what Shantideva is saying about detaching from lust, it almost seems like this meditation is like, it seems like it's preparing you for the Bardo state, so that when you're on that journey and you're surrounded by all these visions of possible future parents, it's like you're detached from that, and like it seems like Shantideva is like setting you up to not fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if Geshe can comment on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Geshe dire dene di bena dundra di dan dundra ngoma di sikje denso di mang chewa ki jushi di bena ngato di lugi mitsangwa dang chakpe yul machepa bena di ludi misangwa dene Pelcher ani dire pena ngato di bardo la lepe kapsu ngato pena ngato di maung bagi pama di trick jorgi chegi ore di pe mangpo 아니 난기오래 페나 디 보당 보모 디 트릭조 아니 나서 디 통네 디 도착 케나 tene nga so yang di korwala ani kegere pelcher di pena shiwa le nga so di maung pala di ani mayong we gichedo nga so di nga so pena docha kegyu yomare ani dene shiwa la gi nangshin di dochak di kyunre ani chegu yomare pana di bardo gi chedu ani pantogya gi chedu culture kongi gyumsan tripe gyum chaktri nangpe gyumsan dire di dwarwa yana
parte ningsam jerde ta partu se yomar chidani selen sipani da kyawachma samjarngen dirwa
hola
sepa zenata sepa de lembani de geba sepa da guba lembani de dese te dobe sepa dese te pe kroa chinche to chagore kanji partina na ningsam jaro indgala bagi ama teacher judi gala teni pe mai ngalgo de pe jali gana jinda de tini namshi de pugorwa tizo direte 디 던다다 말 던다디 세야데 지단에 질나 차발 넣어야 돼게 전부 임바지도 숨고하래 던다디 유알에 숨어야 돼
laso okay chekani yabo kon di draw pena ngato di bado ngato di palma di trictor ani nyamdu pekapsu ngato di magi nyal di chalye kan nangshin
오 데니 통고하래
아니
데니
순순
통고니 빼
이월라 말해
아이 딘디 다 딘디 통고하래 파투카블라 딘디 통데 세파데 키고르 데 세파레 인규테 세파레 도 차레
레레 올라서
단다디 유알에 숨야데 지르나 말한조 세파들라 다 망보여와
네 디설보도 디
슈 가야 슈 첨부디 가거래 인디기다 단다디
디설보도 디 칙설보 마초 나도 디 잘리에 콩 난신 디 두셰 샤파 아니 나도
디 마르탄 पर्तुनामशी जिरवा तब हमा टीचर चे थोमिंद गाला पर्तुनामशी दी पे फगी लेदन देवाय ने हमा टीचर चे लेदन देवाय ना माई ngalgo te pe jaling na ngar che de tin phai khwa dingim to pha ngal nan rugu are
laso
di khuran kar
ti lapsha mare
ti sipa tu sa ji sigor ma to tanda di dan devate di shira ge devate yo mare ये कुरान सिपर टू था दे गॉड दे
रे
कंडिस टू गो मेते
ओके
दीजे एनी ते तदुं ते खतला पुहिया ना मालचा 팔라 또서 당겨래 가르가 파당 그 부희야 돼 부딩이 센지바 인자 센네 마티 멘자 마당 말라페 차슴께 팔라 당슴께 거래 아니 예 쳐된데 거라 가서 라바 예 쳐대 남시대 아니 부모께이나 말아도서 당심께 팔아니 자거래 이런 쳐된데 거래 지수 아니 파마니야 파데 부모로도서 재와체요래 야자카시 재와체요래 불에
라소디
아마데 불레도서 재와체요래 부모래 그 당분은 거의 남시 참자들이 그 개발자들 개발 전부야.
예단 연속이 가리기 예초 가리기 연속.
근데 ngalgi
올라서.
ngal난 당분은 뒤가라. 근데 지금 거래. 빠텔라베 단다데 세리데나 전도도 와. 눈다 숨죽숨 거고 간제 노멀 지금 발라. tipe narbo turpose mam pe dunda te gruwa mambo eni pe rugo chathante so pesel boyare ngaju gunde na la yore ngaju do gidi ni yore
di do repe
do na yore ngaju gundo yore tene gidi ni yore liba denga jesu kebaten jemasu
So Geshe says that actually there is definitely a connection between cutting our desire, attachment, lust, and so forth in terms of our next, what happens as far as taking rebirth, but not so much as far as it comes to the bardo, but more so in breaking the links. We have the 12 links of interdependence. And so when we break the link of, so we're focused mostly on craving and becoming. And whenever we can break these links, then we can break the link of interdependence, which forces us into cyclic, another samsaric rebirth, because it is just this cycle. It is this big circle of these 12 links. One leads to another, leads to another. And so when you break the links, then actually that's when you can interrupt this cycle and be free from samsara. And so it's especially craving that Master Shantideva is really having us train our minds to break that link of craving, of wanting. And so, there is the appearance of the bardo consciousness. So in the bardo consciousness, if the bardo consciousness perceives, so that you have your future father and mother in, seeing them in intercourse, the bardo consciousness can perceive the mother's womb also as the great celestial palace. And in that way, then the sperm enters the womb, and the cycle, continues in that way as well. Then there is conception from that point. But basically what Shantideva is working with is he's working on the, those steps in the link of craving, which then leads to becoming. But also when it comes to this link of becoming, Geshe says that, and also there are sutras. This is written in the sutras, and there's more in more detail in the sutras, that if one is conceived, if one is to be a female, to be born as a female, that it is said that that bardo consciousness in perceiving that couple in union, if it is to be female, then that consciousness had more attachment to the male, to the father, and had more of an aversion to the mother. So it having kind of being a female itself was, being of the same, had kind of like this kind of competitive, it was the same. So more of an aversion to the mother, an attraction and love towards the father, seeing them in union, and is born as a female. If one is to be born as a male, then it is the reverse. There is an attraction, attachment, a love, more of a towards the mother, and more of an aversion towards the father, that being the same of themselves. So also there is that, and it's written within the sutras. And if one is to be born as a boy, then one enters the right side of the womb. And if one is to be born as a female, then enters into the left side of the mother's womb. But anyways, Matt, this is more, Geshe says, more about breaking that link of craving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. 다양한 주제 제가 탈살시키지 강력하고요.
Kalikamasala.
Okay.
Diane,
Mm-hmm.
did Julie's question that she had in the chat?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't read that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Julie, let me look.
She just asked, do you see it?
Let's see.
It was from Julie. She said, and we should continue to do one mala with that mantra daily. Was that correct?
Oh, okay. With the mantra that we spoke, the Oma Shri Singanda.
Yeah.
Should we do any niman takpa ngato di trengwa chik di kor chik katsu any angton katsu
Tete chibari omara mangyung katsu na te dengi na sada na lunyen da tene no pakagre gachiketam pakagre pe yabore.
So actually however, so really it's however much one can do. It doesn't need to be one full mala. One could do more, one could do less. But Geshe says 100% benefit will come for the, the physical aspect of the body, the channels, the physical aspect of the body, very beneficial. However much one can do.
Yeah.
Were there 2 initiations then?
Yeah. Tuji chimbo wanjan, then cheris single jenang.
So actually, Geshe said yes. There was the empowerment of the great compassionate one, Avalokiteshvara, and then the authorizing empowerment of the Avalokiteshvara lion's roar.
Tuji chimbo wanjan ane zo de karo tamjin najur ki semke de zo in sungsong.
And so really, when His Holiness bestowed the empowerment of the Great Compassionate One, this was really very much completely involved with the altruistic mind of Bodhicitta.
Wang wemade chu chepen wang nidre. Chuan de chukutuche. Chepen wang de zukutuche.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so going back to Srimason Yankir check the
Chu the chuan da chepen chu wang wemade tere. Chuan de chukutuche. Chepen wang de zukutuche. Zugu zede zugu lungu de chugu niroa. 아니 추구제대 추구 이시 추구도 원이 군이로와 어떻게 줍제 던다데 대 송이 삼로다이나 대 추구두그리 장주기 삼로다이나 zugu두그리 집어지게 돼서 밍마라지 따르마도.
So then His Holiness bestowed the empowerments like the water empowerment, and also then the chirpe one maocha.
이래 뭐 chupinze de ta tarjangda ringa do. ringa da tarjangnang do. Boda te chupin wangslare.
Oh, lasso. So he had also the second, like the offering empowerment. When he bestowed that, then he wore the crown of the like the crown ornament of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the 5 Buddha families. Of the 5 Buddha families. And so actually the bestowing, obtaining the first empowerment, then this is for the purpose of the Dharmakaya, and so the water empowerment, the Dharmakaya and the essence kaya, and then the offering empowerment where he wore the crown of the 5 Buddha families. This is for the accomplishment of form of the form kayas, the Sambhoga kaya and Nirmana kaya accomplishment. And so really these are accomplished through two things: the accomplishment of bodhicitta and the accomplishment of emptiness. And so through accomplishing bodhicitta and emptiness, we see that we can accomplish the 4 kayas. There's nothing that can't be attained through bodhicitta and emptiness.
Yeah. Okay.
Geshe,
Huh?
may I ask one more thing?
Yeah, okay. Me no problem, but.
That's okay. I have time.
I'll be really quick, and this is sort of for the future. So I was very happy to receive the empowerments from His Holiness, and I felt really great about it, but I'm not sure how to put it into practice. So I'm just wondering if maybe that's something we could discuss at some future time.
Ani gyawo rinpoche ne di wong shune pe gabo chung te tanda nato lakla tenya de korla na tenden me pelcher nato maumpala de korla donan chesigiyana.
여름 좀 많이 사송송 많이. 투지 침배 중화 이거 두마 중리 남아서 중중 이거 두마 그러나 나서 된나이나 장주기 셈 아니 니제는 컴팩트 누구래서 가나서 많이다 뒤져 둥둥래는 뭐다 당기 사나니도 냠내지도 빼 가서 빼 직부지도 빼 대체 맞다. 냠내는 세미나라 장주기 셈다 송이도 벨 타와테 길 양양도 삼았다. 아니 이게 두만 된다는 띵냠내지.
So His Holiness did give some advice for us to actually take up this practice where we had we were bestowed the empowerment of like the speech empowerment where we were authorized to do the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, and also then to visualize, I don't remember how they called her in English, the six, the goddess of the six syllables, to visualize. So Avalokiteshvara. And so we can visualize, visualize Avalokiteshvara and do it. Dene chenra zegani mikpakena de yegetoma consola ani kupar yona dene yegetuma yang ani.
Tate jama kiran to tona ena te ko kazangama na jinjenete 제리지 닝크 투가달라 담이지 삼다 데니 이기 투마 예 거르체네 데로 어저 디시김바베 텐데 두짐베자 미바체나 야보레.
Okay. So actually a good way to visualize, I was asking Geshe-la exactly how we should visualize as we say the 6-syllable mantra, just to get his advice on that, what we should visualize. We can visualize our, we can visualize Chenra Zig, and as we Ngato pena di darke di yangmena dunke Geshe-la di darke.
Dita
Not
dunla saltap.
Dunla. Okay.
Dunla saltap. Aniti tugadala rang du su chanta sana lapanyop sujila tape singigi tape tigala jerizi saltap jerizi.
Dene chenrese tukane di
tukane tami samtangore.
Lasso.
Tamare she. Oh, she samtang. She data Om Mani Padme Hum that is samtangire.
Okay. So what you should do is you visualize Chenra Zig an arm's length in the space in front of you. And through the light emanating from Chenra Zig, Dutse Gang, Tangpo di Gang Lula Dutse Gang.
Teni Page, she didn't
Was that true?
Was it in Jazodechi? Any Kubanaje ran Sambudaleji, Kopa Tomba Imbache, Mane to the Silva Tamtam, some tangore. Anything was it the Nalo Nene, Visigimba, Rang Sambula lay on the lab, Visigimba, and then Yelde mi Pachananda, Maldi Mile mi Pachananda, Funde mi Pakarchan and Dior, the Chaparamare.
Okay.
Yelde Chedigala, Vizima Tiba Gemne, any bay, Ya Kane, any tepe rang gosumi dipate sambuni ma lundoya de. Ani melde sidikala disima dosje mani yani teyon dosje ani sose lugi pukani ma saolandoya de samdayare. Punde sidikala ta gosum ta dipate so that take this is the tepatana desupe karson chamel torson mi bache gore. Indigenous pay abore.
So we visualize. So we visualize Chenrezig in the space before us, and from Chenrezig's heart center, then light emanates. The light emanating enters a very small place into your crown, and then begins to fill you with nectar. You can fill with nectar in the ascending manner or the descending manner. In the ascending manner, you visualize that this light meets you at the crown of your head and slowly is, ascending, slowly is filling you from the bottom up. And it is completely purifying all of your negativities and obscurations of body, speech, and mind, and you become completely purified. Or alternatively, it enters your crown and descending, then it flushes out through your lower doors all of the impurities of body, speech, and mind no longer remaining. You are completely pure. And then you visualize the Shri at your heart, the Shri syllable, at your heart center. Yekor di mani di yekor.
Mani yigitu made yekor chekor.
Yekor. And it
mani pad me hunzakados.
So you have the Shri at your heart center, and then rotating clockwise, you have the 6-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and you recite the mantra from within that state of being completely purified and having Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of Compassion, in the space before you. And in this way, it is really incredibly effective. Your compassion just kind of explodes. It just really expands.
And this is the 1,000-arm, 1,000-eyed.
The Chaktong Chentongi Mekpa ke the
미밖에도나 약소들이 만에 제리지 차지보 미밖에 안 되고 해버려 말해. 돈 달래 집어래.
Lasso. Pana the Chakshi Yamana Chaktong.
자동 가 수소 로 렘바이나 땡디고.
Actually, whatever you're able to. If you are, Geshe says, if you have the ability to visualize, the 1,000-arm Chenrezig, wonderful. But also, we could also visualize a simpler version of Chenrezig. There are, versions of 4-arm Chenrezig in different versions. So whatever's suitable, whatever works for you.
수술로 곰바당 루는 삼루 차르타데 차산지 차르투구에나 강찬에 띠켜버려 말대.
Yeah, whatever really is in accord with your, like your mental capacities and abilities, whatever accords with that, whatever you can match your visualization to your capability, that's what will benefit you. Which of those it is isn't so terribly important.
파인데 많이 많이 빼매 흥라거든. 엄세들 이게 숨여로 우 맞으리 이게 숨데 누바버랑 류가 있음다 아니 다베 제리지 구숨투 숨쳐야래 많이 세두가라 니 장주기
nesum gonga again la di kusum yamena nesum
nesum 야는 구숨 다 마다베 류가 있음 nesum 야는 마다베 수sun 누바버랑게 류가 있음 아니 다베 구숨투숨 야네네 숨 때까지 가르진나 개발해요 말해 구숨투숨 대래 많이 세디가라 장주기 셈춘 거래 빼면서 왜 동리도 왜 타와때 준 거래 동이 또 벨타와.
Mm-hmm.
쿵되게 탑시 야르마치바 탑시 숭둥들와 대충 거래.
Tapshe sumdudrawa.
오 탑시 숭들
Mm-hmm.
탑시 야르마치바 탑시 숭둥들와
Mm-hmm.
대충 거. 근데와 어떠도 스제는 sometimes 마네사에는 한 전부 온 거다.
Mm-hmm. So we have the 6-syllable mantra of Avalokiteshvara in Chenrezig, Zig, and it starts, so we have Om in the beginning. Om is actually made up of 3 in distinct parts or distinct sounds, Aum, and these symbolize the body, speech, and mind of the practitioner, or the 3 places within the practitioner. So we can either say 3 places or 3 kayas. So, we have, the 3 places of the practitioner and the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. So when we say Om, all of that is symbolized. Your 3 places and the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. When we say Mani, this is the supreme mind. It symbolizes the mind of Bodhicitta, the awakened mind. Om Mani Padme is the view of emptiness. This symbolizes and means the view of emptiness. And then we end with Hung. And Hung symbolizes the inseparable union of method and wisdom. And so if you can hold the meaning of all of this in your mind as you do this visualization, this is something that is very, very beneficial.
야, 나 주스 찍다다 대화 친선 계란서 갈레마카는.
Okay, so now we're an hour over. You all must be getting very tired.
그래서 니기 오비갈 찍음인데 니 그래서 니 비모 갈레 찍음인데 zupa.
Is it hard for your knees, or just to sit for this many hours for your knees?
I wasn't sitting in a chair, I guess.
Huh?
It's
Did you
okay.
say you are sitting in a chair?
Yeah, my knees are fine.
Oh, okay.
I'm sitting on a high throne.
I'm worried about Geshe-la's knees more than my own.
Yeah, right.
Me no problem. Me okay.
Okay.
Yes. Speaking of throne, Geshe-la did say within the visualization of Chenrezig in the space in front, 1 arm's length away, then this is, supported on a lion throne. We visualize Chenrezig.
생기게 따뜻이 삼다이나 생기게 때 지리지 남줄 삼당 거다. 지리지도 두기 집어지 그냥 삼당 거래.
Gondakinla. The Sengege.
생기게 때 민지베게 준 거래. 민지베게.
Mijikbege.
다 지리지
Gondakinla. The Mijikbege dang drelwa.
민지베게 준 거래. 천재 생기게 때.
All right.
다 되게 가려 그러잖아. 노스 생기게 때다 지리지기 랑 투기 집어지 삼당 거래. 집어지 그냥. 이 노스에 티야 딱 봐도 당든 사이 높아도 거래라.
Side doesn't work.
당 자여라 자당.
Zasana?
전당 자세를 당닌 높아 영어야지 그래. 남당 라유 때반에 높아 영어야지 그래. 티카기 연락 그래.
Lasso.
잡만 nem바다 루율 사오니 높아 영어야다 가기 연락 그래.
Lasso.
아니 싱게도 세네 자리 동아트 라그르다 간제 두스 지야되게 버든 버니 높아 영어야지 그래. 티카기 연락 그래. 그 sometimes nobody to talk to be at the car to be attending on God. They keep it.
Lasso. So actually, when we visualize the lion throne, so Chenrezig on the lion throne, the throne is being supported by 8 lions. And what they symbolize is freedom from the 8 fears. So being free from the 8 fears. And so when we think about all of their arms, or the paws, paws and legs of the lions, that is supporting on upward, this is being protected from all of the harm and danger that could descend from tang
lai
this blocks any dangers and harm from the God realms from descending. Then the lion's feet firmly planted on the ground protects from any danger or harm from the underworlds. And then as their faces kind of appear like this, then this is protection from any harm that could come from in between. And so we think about that when we think about these 8 lions that are supporting the throne of Chenrezig.
Yeah. Now
everybody recite well your 6-syllable mantras, because you don't have anything else to do. We're all on lockdown pretty much, no responsibilities really. Recite your 6-syllable mantras well.
Coronavirus changpuyo marzupa lenga andona kuragre lenga mandona ragmare
Kari Bhagimare.
Coronavirus.
Oh, coronavirus. I thought it was a Tibetan word. Okay, yes, stay in, be happy, recite your mantra. You will be making a very big accumulation of mantra, and you will not contract the coronavirus. You go out, you might contract the coronavirus. Stay in and do Mani mantra, you'll stay well.
Yeah. Kanchi chanjuki something there. Tuji chimbo that. Morning as a like Kela. Jangbajan and Miketa Yamars the Yarm Sunda. Yarmjit. Tendijin Pochis Tangas. Kazutu Chetati Jistunjudicala.
And so now this very precious bodhicitta, the awakened mind, that it comes from the generation of love and the generation of compassion, just like His Holiness said. He said that exactly. He said it so beautifully. That bodhicitta will come from our generation of love and compassion. And so here, we should really follow in His footsteps, follow in those footsteps, have love, be loving, be compassionate, and work towards our development of bodhicitta.
Yeah. Kari rawe kurave jingambe pendang dewa malin jungwe chere ziwan tenzin gyatso jabe sipe kato tenju chi jambo bawe chitra kim kundo zambo teyan tejinde teta kunji shizu lalo rawan deda tamje raton tusum shibe gyawa tam in
the land encircled by snow-white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefit, flows in your person, Chenra, Zig, Tenzin, Gyamso, remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience and Samantabhadra too, so now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good actions.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Geshe.
Geshe-la, you too.
Tuesday,
Thank you, Diane.
So, of course.